To quote Kramer from Seinfeld, Mother Nature's a mad scientist. And he's not wrong. There are natural phenomena out there that's so strange it sounds made up. But it isn't. And what's more, some of it can be extremely dangerous. We've picked out some of the most extraordinary examples for our rundown of strange natural phenomena. While ice is a threat to people's safety in terms of its freezing temperatures and tendency to collapse, it does cause chaos in other unexpected ways. Check out this awesome but deadly ice tsunami. Essentially, it's a constantly moving iceberg pushed by strong winds that put pressure on ice that's thawing but not yet melted. Give it a bit of a slope to go down, and you're left with a wall of ice measuring up to 12 meters, 40 feet, in height that can rampage through an unsuspecting community, inflicting some serious damage. A regular tsunami is powerful, but this one is made of harder material, so in a sense it's even worse, though of course somewhat slower. This year, Lake Erie witnessed some truly terrifying effects when ice began to pile up and go on the move. It looks kind of like someone's shifting the cold stuff with an enormous invisible shovel. In fact, the ice tsunami is itself referred to as an ice shove. Another name used for it is Ivu, a word from the Inupiat people indigenous to North Alaska. This isn't a new thing, as reports of ice shoves have been noted as far back as the early 19th century. One of the most surprising things is the sound it makes, which has been compared to a train or even thunder. So at least you get some kind of warning before it hits. When an area is dried out or partially dried out, it tends to have a lot of soil and sediment lying around in loose particles. So when a powerful wind blows, it can give rise to a dust storm. Such phenomena are found in places like the infamous Dust Bowl, concentrated in states such as Kansas, Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas. In the 1930s, a series of storms, or as they were alarmingly called, black blizzards, rocked the country, with arguably the most notorious being Black Sunday in 1935. It's believed 300 million tons of soil was lifted off the surface of the prairies by processes known as saltation and suspension. Saltation basically means particles being carried along by liquid, but it wasn't all the work of Mother Nature, the mad scientist. Mankind played his role in contributing to the events of Black Sunday. Farming and ranching took its toll on the land, and the natural balance which would have kept the ground more stable wasn't there to cope with the winds. That, combined with other factors like a drought, meant when the storm kicked off, the outcome was devastating. There has been evidence found of dust storms throughout history. In the 6th century BC, the Persian army of Cambyses II, numbering 50,000, was believed to have been lost in a dust storm. Flash forward to 2009, and Australia suffered a storm which was vast, stretching across 2,700 miles, 3,450 kilometers. Here's where it gets particularly nasty, as this event was thought to carry radioactive material. In addition to hazardous particles, a dust storm can also bring diseases into communities. One worrying theory is that an American storm of 1935 blew measles, strep throat, and other unpleasantness into Kansas, which also reported escalating rates of infant mortality. It isn't just dust and sand that'll go into your lungs, should you be unlucky enough to be caught up in one of those natural nightmares. The idea of an exploding lake may sound ridiculous, but take our word for it. This is a thing. A lake explosion is caused by CO2 building up inside a body of water itself, finally releasing itself spectacularly as a poisonous cloud that can be hazardous for human health. This strange phenomenon is called a lake overturn, or limnic eruption. Limnic is a term applied for freshwater sources like lakes or swamps. There's nothing fresh about a lake that's ready to blow, of course, but we won't argue with science on this one. But it isn't just deadly gas you need to worry about with an exploding lake. The force from the blast can generate a tsunami if there's enough disruption, so it's a double threat. Where does such a mass of CO2 in a lake come from? Experts aren't entirely sure, though volcanic gas and decaying organic matter in the water are thought to be possible culprits. So a lake in a volcanic area is a prime candidate for eruption. The effect on the lake is obviously dramatic and has been compared to an unopened can of fizzy drink suddenly going off. A famous example of a lake explosion was out in West Cameroon, Africa, at Lake Monoun. In 1984, no less than 37 people perished through suffocation as a result of a limnic eruption cloud. The bodies were blistered, leading authorities to reason that this could be a chemical weapons attack. Then, 2 years later, another explosion happened in the same region with an astonishing death toll of 1,700. However, there is an upside to this situation. By extracting gases such as methane from the bottom of problem lakes, the government stumbled on a new energy source. Now, instead of killing people, this phenomenon can help power the planet. Weird how these things work out. One thing that makes dinosaurs so compelling is that there's a lot we still don't know about them. First, they were scaly, then they were feathery, and experts still aren't sure about the basic stuff, like how they died out. Sure, an asteroid probably hit the Earth and wiped them out, but at the end of the day, that's not a dead cert, so to speak. The Chicxulub impactor is the name given to the colossal chunk of rock that hit the outskirts of what became the town of Chicxulub, Mexico, 66 million years ago. The rock was believed to be anywhere up to 81 kilometers, 265,748 feet in diameter, and weighing 4.6 times 1,017 kilograms, 10,313.6655 pounds. One thing's for sure, it left a huge crater. The crater is approximately 150 kilometers, 93 miles wide, and a few miles in depth. A new chapter was added to the impactor's story earlier this year after an archaeologist found fossil evidence of the type of conditions that existed when Chicxulub experienced that devastating event. The fossils, which are of fish and trees, are peppered with fragments composed of rock and glass. These rain down from above post-impact. Water also plays a large part in the composition, appearing to confirm views that the area was flooded by a surge from the sea, known as a sesh. The force would have been so powerful that it acted like a giant watery hand, picking up everything below the surface, such as those poor fish, and throwing them onto the shore. As if that wasn't bad enough, they were also dealing with these hard fragments, some of which were lodged in their gills. Seems the world really was turned upside down by this disaster from long ago. The issue of pollution in cities is an ongoing one, though it's thought of as a man-made problem rather than a natural one. And while the idea of natural phenomena occurring in an urban center like London seems a strange idea, such things do happen, and the Great Smog of 1952 was a case in point. It underlined the dangers of urban smoke like nothing else before or since. Over the course of 5 days, a shocking figure of around 8,000 people died from the smog. Smog is a combination of fog and smoke. This brand of stuff had a yellowish-brown color. It was 48 kilometers, 30 miles wide, and rendered Londoners virtually blind because it was so thick and all-pervasive. The smog affected those with lung conditions, and incidences of bronchitis and pneumonia became fatal. If you were poor, you were really in trouble. How on earth did it happen? The answer lies in a combination of industrial-strength pollution and unpredictable weather. When a warm layer of air rolled across and wouldn't move, it contained the city in a bubble of cold air, which in turn prevented the smoke leaving London's atmosphere. The smog had nowhere to go, so went straight into the airways of the British capital's citizens. This stuff smelled horrible, with the stench said to be like rotting eggs, and it also left black slime on the streets. Finally, a wind came in from the west to break the stagnation and move the smog away. The smog had caused devastation to communities, but it would be 4 years before the Clean Air Act was passed and London began to manage its environment a bit more carefully. While Year Without a Summer sounds like a pretentious album title, it's actually the name given to a truly strange natural phenomenon. This occurred in the early 19th century, specifically 1816. People were baffled to see the summer weather that year. It wasn't warm and the sun was noticeable by its absence. Instead, in Europe and North America, the sky rained down on the population and everything was exceptionally dark and moody. It was as if the gods were angry about something. This was a fanciful idea, yet not a million miles away from the truth. Speaking of vast distances, the cause of the weather shift could be found over in Indonesia. The mighty volcano of Mount Tambora had spent a large part of the previous year erupting. It took 4 months before the lava died down. Amazing, but true. While this was bad news for the locals, it was huge enough to create an impact across the globe too. Particles from the volcano went into the atmosphere, were blown along to other parts of the world, and consequently ruined many people's summers. Crops were unable to grow and food supplies were seriously threatened. There was also a strange literary effect, in that Mary Shelley came up with the concept of Frankenstein while trapped in a house with her contemporaries such as fellow scribbler Lord Byron. The weather that year was monstrous in more ways than one. Anyone who enjoys the clubbing scene will have been caught up in a foam party or two. A foam storm, on the other hand, is far from a party for those concerned. In 2016, Australia bore the brunt of serious storm conditions, which reportedly killed several individuals. But an unexpected side effect of this was a wall of foam that rushed in to envelop unsuspecting people, such as the guy in this footage. The foamy onslaught is a natural cocktail of saltwater proteins, dead algae, and other weird ingredients that was blended into an epic amount of goop. So when Oz was recovering after being buffeted by a storm, they found they had a foam stack the size of a tsunami to deal with on top. And for extra terror, it's not unheard of to find sea snakes mixed up in this salty concoction. It looks like the world's biggest bubble bath, but appearances can truly be deceiving. From fearsome foam to the wildest of waters, there's no shortage of strange natural phenomena to boggle the mind. We've selected some of the most eye-catching, but maybe there's something we missed that you want to tell us about. If you liked the video, then click the subscribe button and turn on notifications, and you'll be the first to know when we release a new video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.